Sorry about that. I just figured it'd be better to embrace the fact that I'm slowly going to lose my sanity over the course of this video series. If you're still watching this, you're either a One Piece fan or are curious if the series is worth getting into 20 years too late. Group 1, you're good to go. Group 2, if you care about spoilers, go watch the first 61 episodes, then come back. It's not a lot, just 24 hours of animation. I should probably explain the premise of this video. If you're a returning subscriber, you've probably already seen at least a few of the shorts I've been posting where I watch an episode of One Piece and then record a roughly minute-long review of it. This is because I decided to challenge myself to watch the entire series, because I wanted to watch the live-action series, but I didn't want spoilers. I decided I would make a video out of it, which turned into a series of videos, and so the bulk of this video is actually going to be those minute-long reviews compiled into one place. But to keep you watching, and to keep true to my promise of watching and reviewing all of One Piece, I'm gonna include a fair bit more than just shorts. So sit back, grab a cup of seawater, and relax as we get started with the 1998 One Piece OVA. You wouldn't believe how hard this was to track down. That's a lie. It was actually incredibly easy, just with methods I don't think I can legally recommend. But it sure is weird how this show about pirates has so much hard to legitimately locate media. The actual One Piece anime started airing on October 20th, 1999, only a few days before the 109th chapter of the manga was released. However, a year before the serialized adaptation was produced and put on Japanese airwaves, an OVA was produced. For those that don't know, OVA stands for Original Video Animation. These are common in anime on DVDs and Blu-rays as bonus features, or in some cases as standalone animations to cash in an unadapted manga or test the waters for a full adaptation. One Piece was no exception to this, with the OVA One Piece Defeat Them, the Gonzak Pirates, being released as part of Shonen Jump's 30th anniversary event, the 1998 Super Jump Anime Tour. The event included limited theatrical screenings of the OVA across Japan, along with OVAs of Hunter x Hunter and Sekimatsu leader Den Takeshi. The One Piece OVA starts with its own version of what would become the iconic opening to the anime. Wealth, fame, power, and all that jazz. It very quickly becomes evident that the OVA takes place between Orangetown and Syrup Village, which is also when it was produced. We have Luffy, Zoro, and Nami on a smaller craft with no sign of Usopp or the Going Merry. The cruise ship is very suddenly destroyed and Nami is kidnapped by a monster wearing an odd pirate insignia, and Luffy tries to eat the monster. Luffy and Zoro wash ashore and are brought to a local village by this little girl in armor after Luffy beats the ever-loving shit out of two pirates who were harassing her. It turns out those pirates are part of a crew that have recently visited the village and kidnapped every adult man for slave labor, while taking the rest of the island hostage. They've also stolen all the food, and Luffy is hungry, so he immediately rushes off to eat some ass and kick some grub. This backfires stupendously, and Luffy, Zoro, and the little girl all end up chained up after Nami betrays the group and lures Luffy into a trap. Luffy did actually hold up pretty well in this fight, though, his opponent being the leader of the Gonzak Pirates, Gonzak the Pirate, only losing when he gets sprayed with special crab splooge gun that encases him in foam. But back to the gang being chained up, the slave laborers lead a revolt that provides a distraction, allowing Nami to double-cross and free Luffy and Zoro. But the armored girl runs away since she learned that Luffy is a pirate. From here, the story plays out the same as pretty much every shonen climax ever. The secondary protagonists take on the underling of the main bad guy, while the actual hero does his thing with the big boy, choosing to get serious after one of the others makes a sacrifice play that gets easily reversed by the end of the arc. It's nothing genre-bending, but this is a time before people got tired of those played-out tropes because they were still in the process of playing out. Despite not being written by One Piece series creator Eiichiro Oda, the OVA does a good job of maintaining the characterization of the main cast from the super early part of the series. Oda himself even gave praise to the finished product, saying, "The final product is fantastic. Luffy and friends' voices, movements, and sounds are even better than I had imagined them," in the 5th volume release of the manga later in 1998. Honestly, I agree. If this was my first ever exposure to an animated version of One Piece, it would have hit the mark in every way it needed to. The art style isn't as close to the manga as the full series anime is, but it still looks great, even in the low-def, weirdly subtitled version I was able to find. The voice cast does wonderfully. I can't compare them to the main cast of the anime because I watch it dubbed, sue me, but even through the language barrier, it's easy to feel the emotion and weight put behind each line. Other big differences between the OVA and the full series is who animated them. The animation studio behind Gonzak was Production IG, the studio that would go on to animate hit shows like Psycho Pass and Haikyuu, whereas the actual series is produced by Toei Animation, who you may know from such hits as Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, The Muppet Babies, and Dragon Ball. This is a special case for the series, being one of 2 official pieces of One Piece animation not animated by Toei. And this is where I take you on a blast through the past and stitch together a bunch of videos I've already made. Just a warning, the first few are a little dull when I was really getting to the swing of making them, but it picks up within a couple minutes. Also, I'm sorry if you hate the words watching and reviewing all of One Piece, and stay tuned for more by the end of this video. Oh, and I'm gonna say a lot of stupid shit. It's literally my first time ever watching this show, and I have never interacted with the fan base outside of out-of-context clips and fan art on Twitter. So I hope you enjoy the first 5 episodes. I'll see you real soon. I'm going to be watching and reviewing every episode of One Piece, starting with Episode 1. So overall, I think it's a really good introduction to the series, and especially the main character, Luffy. They mentioned something called Devil Fruit offhandedly, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the cause for all the anime BS powers that they're going to bring in. I know that the redheaded character's name is Nami because people on the internet are weird. And yeah, overall, I really like the art style. It's different than regular anime art style. It's kind of more soft, without proper words to put it. Oh yeah, and it's kind of hard to judge this as a shonen anime considering it's one of the shonen anime. So yeah, follow for more part 2 soon. Watching and reviewing every episode of One Piece. Episode 2. This episode introduces us to Zoro as well as has more of Nami in it, and I'm assuming these two are going to be the big two crew members. I'm not so sure about the kid. I think he just kind of gives me a vibe like he's not going to be a permanent cast member. I don't know. But overall, really good episode. Really shows off the characterization of Luffy and Zoro, and you just know that this guy is a jerk with a haircut like that. Really didn't expect the Marine captain to be as big of a jerk as he was, but I guess it's kind of be expected. The pirates are the good guys, so the government has to be the bad guys. Well, the government usually is the bad guys. But overall, I'm digging the vibe so far. I really like these watercolor style backgrounds. They're super nice. And I also like how all the characters and stuff don't really have hard edges. It's more round and soft when you compare it to something like Dragon Ball Z. Stay tuned for episode 3. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 3. I think I figured out why I thought this kid wouldn't be a main character. It's because he's not in the intro, the intro goes and shows all the characters that are going to be part of the main cast and it just doesn't show him. So it's pretty obvious right from the bat that he's not going to be in it. They explain more about what devil fruits are, which means I totally called that they'd be important. In fact, this whole episode is kind of just a lore dump. They explain what the Grand Line is and what the Red Line is, and I'm still kind of confused, but it might just be because I have this up on my second monitor while I do other things. But yeah, I was right about Kobe not being a main character in the rest of the show, though I don't doubt that he'll come back eventually. Overall, I think this was a pretty good episode for world building, but not really for any action stuff. The fight in the first half of the episode is kind of weirdly framed and animated, but I think you can kind of forgive that for late 90s animation on a TV budget. That's all for this episode. Stay tuned for episode 4. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 4. This episode starts with Nami just sentencing 3 men to death, and honestly, respect. But when Luffy loses his hat, dude, you've got stretchy powers, just reach out and grab it. It is nice to learn more about Luffy's backstory, though, especially this early on, and Kid Luffy is adorable. I especially love this bit where he's drinking the juice, and then everyone laughs at him. Oh my gosh, that was funny. Also, Luffy having always been that confrontational person, maybe we'll see more growth out of that as the series goes on. Again, this is only episode 4 out of over 1,000. And it's been a while since I recorded the last episode of this because I've been working on stuff. I love seeing this bit where Luffy gets the straw hat for the first time. That straw hat is so iconic that even before I watched One Piece, I knew the whole straw hat pirates thing. But also Luffy, why didn't you do this when you were trying to get the hat? Anyway, subscribe for more and stay tuned for the next episode. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 5. I find it kind of funny that one of the most feared pirates so far is a clown of all things, but he does have drip and his branding is on point. Shout out to the guy drinking 7 beers at once. The power to detach his limbs is pretty cool, and it kind of makes me wonder what the other devil fruits can do. But also it feels like there's a solid 30 seconds at the end where Buggy's just kind of waiting to get shot by the cannon instead of trying to get out of the way of it. And I hate to be continued. It always makes me want to continue it. Overall, pretty good episode, great action, good humor, can't wait for the next one. Stay tuned for more. Now that you've seen me talk about the first 5 episodes of the show, let's talk about the recap episode of those first 5 episodes. I wasn't lying when I said all of One Piece. Don't worry, we won't have to cover another one of these for about 250 episodes. Recap episode 1, also known as Emergency Planning, a perfect strategy for the One Piece, features no new animation, being comprised mostly of clips from the first 5 episodes, with new voiceover being done to frame it as Luffy, Zoro, and Nami talking about their adventures before Nami officially joined the crew. That's it. That's literally it. The voiceover doesn't even delve into new territory beyond acknowledging that Nami was on Alvida's ship at the same time Luffy was. I suppose this episode had more of a purpose on a pre-streaming era when hearing about a series late meant you either had to wait for a DVD or just hop in blindly. But I'm a zoomer, so I've always had ways of watching episodes I might have missed baked into the ways I consume media. That said, it is time to get back to the actual episodes. There's still quite a few to go. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece? Episode 6. Luffy, you are made of rubber. You can squeeze through those bars. This dog is my new favorite character. Long live Shushu. I find it really funny how Zoro really only needs a nap to get back to full health. This Beast Tamer guy is kind of a jerk. Mayor, with his weird outfit, has a pretty interesting backstory. Really makes you sympathetic for the whole town that Buggy immediately starts destroying. No words on this one, just a funny animation loop. Episode ends with setup for a fight between Luffy and Buggy, and also Nami joins Luffy's crew just because he's nice, which I'm assuming is how he's going to recruit most of the crew. There's still a lot of people from the intro that have yet to actually even be shown on screen. Speaking of the intro, it is super catchy and I cannot get it out of my head. That's all for this episode. I really enjoyed it. Can't wait for the big fight between Buggy and Luffy. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece? Episode 7. This is the moment that it dawned on me Buggy's crew are supposed to be circus themed, and that's why the guy in the last episode was a beast tamer, a lion tamer, and then this guy's the acrobat. I feel like the fight between Zoro and the acrobat is kind of interesting, but it just doesn't play out like long enough. I know that's kind of weird to want an anime fight to go longer, considering they usually go on for too long, but this one doesn't even take up half the episode. I love how cheap the animation looks. Like, you can really tell they were stretching the budget, probably because this is still the first season, but like, it's kind of funny. So, do you think that Buggy can like separate his fingers too? Because he seems to like just separating at the wrist. I do like how the sentimentality of Luffy with his hat is really what makes him angry. Overall, same vibe as the previous episodes. On point with the humor, on point with the action. I'm loving the art style. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 8. Dog watching edition. Buggy's nose is still big and red in the flashbacks. Does that mean it's just like that? Because he's not a clown yet. You know what, Buggy? I agree. My first instinct when hiding something is also to stick it in my mouth. So how many pieces can Buggy split into? Because like he subdivides even further than before in this shot. But like, how far can it go? Can he do it molecule by molecule? I feel like I'm putting too much thought into this considering he ends up looking like this. I think it's interesting he only gets knocked away, which means he's probably going to come back because like that's what you do when you don't want to even twinkle Team Rocket style. The episode also ends on this teaser for the guy with the egg slingshot in the intro. I wonder what his deal is. That's all for this episode. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece? Episode 9. So the first introduction to Usopp is that he's a serial liar, which like, I don't know how he's going to fit in with the crew, but he seems like a nice person later in the episode. Luffy, why didn't you do that when your hat flew away? At least Usopp does try to use his lying for good and try to scare away the pirates. I also think it's pretty neat how Luffy already knows Usopp's dad, Yasopp, but they have the dumbest names ever. The names probably sound less dumb once you've gotten used to them, but just on the first introduction, they sound kinda dumb. I also like how Yasopp doesn't shut up about his son. That's cute. This moment where they scare the kids is hilarious. Zoro, you are a funny man. I like how Usopp is friends with the rich girl and that he doesn't want to take advantage of her by trying to get her to pay for the pirate's ship, even though Luffy is fully intent on committing criminal trespassing and then asking the person whose house he broke into to pay for his pirate ship. I get that it's introducing the new characters and new story bits, but like, I wish a little more happened. Anyway, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 10. Still with my dogs. Also, this officially marks about 1/100th of the way through the series. That butler is definitely poisoning her, and that's the reason she's weak. I love how earnest and honest Luffy is. Like, it's fun to see a character's flaw being that they're too honest, because like he's definitely screwing up the entire situation right now by doing this. Also, moonwalking hypnotist is kind of funny. I like how he keeps putting himself to sleep whenever he tries to hypnotize people. Luffy is made of rubber, so like there's no way he's actually dead here. It's only 10 episodes in, but it looks like we're getting a little mini arc for every character they introduce that's going to be part of the crew, so I am looking forward to seeing everyone else's arcs too. I think this episode did a lot better in terms of setup than the previous one, but I'm still looking forward to what's coming next. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 11. The dog won't get off my lap edition. Usopp, boy who cried wolfed his way into no one believing him. And like, man, what did you expect? I mean, like, come on. It is still heartbreaking when the rich girl doesn't believe him, though. Oh, man. I just wish she would. And there goes the dog. And when Usopp lies to the kids to get them to leave so they're not in danger anymore, oh, I gotta admit, he's kind of growing on me. I also like how the Straw Hat crew is willing to help him because he did that honorable thing of making sure the kids don't get hurt. Great setup for the next episode. I need to mow my lawn. Like and subscribe for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 12. Where was Clawhador hiding the knife fingers? Were they in his pant leg or something? Those seem way too rigid to be anywhere reasonably on his body that he could hide them. The oil plan was so smart. If only Usopp was a modicum of intelligent, it would have worked. If they had been at the right shore. I refuse to believe anyone named Captain Jango, who hypnotizes people and moonwalks everywhere, can command the respect of a crew. What's with every pirate crew and having such on-point branding? Like, is there someone that goes around and saying you guys are gonna be the Black Cat Pirates, they're the Drag Queen Pirates, they're the Clown Pirates, and we're gonna make you all a special flag? Like, do they have to apply to the Pirate Trademark Office? No offense to the Straw Hat Pirates, but at this point, between the four of them, they have a combined total of 2 brain cells. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 13. 13 is normally an unlucky number, but I absolutely loved this episode. Especially the part where Luffy straight up rips off their figurehead. Oh my gosh, Luffy's just like a Looney Tunes character, and I love it. I absolutely hate this guy, though, and his brother. Both of them just, I hate them on a very fundamental basis of their character and design. I want them to die. If I don't see his head rolling on the ground, then this worst arc ever. I want this exact scene, except instead of Nami, it's the cat guy, and instead of his shoulder, it's his head falling off of his body. Blood splatters everywhere. I just hate the cat guys. But other than the cat guys, easily really good episode. I'm looking forward to the rest of the arc. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 14. They call this his pussyfoot maneuver. And this time they at least have the decency to explain that his claws came from the bag he was carrying and not out of nowhere. I was so happy when I thought Clawhador was gonna kill the 2 cat dudes, and then so disappointed when he didn't, and then so happy when Zoro did. They deserved it. Luffy waking up, catching a death disc in his mouth, and then only being mad because Nami stepped on his face? That's peak comedy. Usopp proving himself to be a good person by going in and saving Kaya from Clawhador. I hate that I'm starting to understand all their names now, but I guess I'm starting to really like the series. I do hate that the teasing for the fight between Luffy and Clawhador goes on for like 5 whole minutes. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 15. Yeah, punch that guy, Luffy. Yeah, kill that guy again, Zoro. Look, I know these kids mean good, but they are signing their death warrants, and everyone is appropriately afraid for them. So I'm guessing even Clawhador being impressed by Luffy's powers means that devil fruit aren't the only way to get strong, because he's probably never had one. So Luffy's just kind of cheating, right? I mean this with 100% sincerity. I absolutely love the cheap animation used for the flashback. Like, the lack of backgrounds, the, like, shadows, the, oh, something went wrong. But it all just plays so well. You can tell that they knew they didn't have a lot of money, and so they rolled with it in a way that makes it look really good. Overall, really enjoyed this episode. Hulu's still not working, so stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 16. For as dumb as Luffy appears to be on the surface, at least he's good at fighting and like actually using battle strategy, because that was clever. I love how opposed Luffy is to Clawhador saying he's gonna kill all his men, because like Luffy genuinely treats the members of his crew with respect, and Clawhador sees the members of his crew as nothing but pawns. I love that they pulled out the anime BS of he's moving too fast to be seen, but the smoke is such a cool way to do that effect. Since Luffy is made of rubber, cuts are like his one weakness, right? They like explicitly say that earlier. US forces fighting the Viet Cong, colorized. Is anyone really gonna believe a note that just says the words, "I leave everything I own to my butler"? Like, that seems hella suspicious. Overall, can't wait to see how the rest of this arc pans out. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 17. Those kids just keep war criming poor Jango. I'm pretty sure explosive rounds are also a war crime. I expected the fight between Kuro and Luffy to end, like, more spectacularly, but I guess just hugging him and headbutting him works. Usopp's heartfelt moment with his crew. Oh my gosh. So sweet. Look, she can say that her illness was caused by the unexpected death of her parents, but we all know that Kuro was poisoning that girl, right? So you're telling me the reason that their boat is goat themed is because this butler just happens to be goat themed and he's the one that designed it. I love how Luffy just manages to keep recruiting people to his crew by just being a good dude. They're also setting up like recurring characters in each island they visit that'll probably come back eventually. That's all for this episode. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 18. They've got the boat, they've got the flag, they've got the sail. All they're missing is the guy from the intro who smokes cigarettes. I really like these creature designs. They're all so goofy and lovable, especially the hippo monkey thing. Oh my gosh. And the pig lion. Oh. And once again, the backgrounds are just so good looking with the like watercolor style. I really like how unique they look and how they really benefit the art style. Top 10 moments before tragedy. Gaimon is great. I hope we come back to him eventually and he's not just like a one episode dude. That's it for this episode. Stay tuned for more. Oh boy, everyone's favorite long-nosed liar has officially joined the crew, which means it's time for another break in the shorts feed. This time for One Piece the movie. Like most anime movies of its era, One Piece the movie isn't canon to the anime. It was released in March of the year 2000, which means we're slowly inching to the parts of the series that were released after I was born. Oh, and One Piece the movie only ever had one official English release, with Japanese audio and English subtitles, and only in the UK and Ireland, in 2014. If you're an American in current year, there's no legal way to watch it without spending hundreds of dollars. It really is a shame that this movie about pirates is so hard to access through legitimate channels. Anyways, the movie takes place between Syrup Village and the Baratie, so they're still missing someone willing to eat all those lollipops they have lying around. I'm not going to go too heavy on the recap with the movie like I was with the OVA, because Toei is notoriously strict when it comes to anime on YouTube, so I want to keep it as fair use as possible. That way I have a decent counter argument should I ever get hit by the copyright bomb for this. Let's start with what I liked about the movie. It's really funny. Everything I love about the East Blue Saga is perfectly captured in the movie. The jokes all land, and there's lots of gags that make it past the localization barrier. Granted, I can't attest to the accuracy of the subtitles, so I could very well have been reading a bunch of bullpucky. Usopp especially played a great comedic role and was a highlight of the movie. The fact that the movie takes place between the Baratie and Syrup Village also helps enhance the humor. It's nice to know that I don't have to think too hard about how the events will inform the future of the series, because it's never going to be mentioned again. That lets me divert more brain power to appreciating the animation and writing. Speaking of, the animation is on par with the ongoing anime, at least where it was in the year 2000, but it has a noticeably more expensive quality. As in, One Piece the movie is the only piece of Toei One Piece animation done with traditional cell-based animation. Every other movie in the anime series is done digitally, and that gives the first movie a very unique look among the Toei version of the property. The actual story of the movie is good enough. It's so early on in the series that it can't really have consequences, so a nice small niche adventure that basically boils down to an arc condensed down to the runtime of 2 or 3 episodes is a pretty good choice. The inclusion of a mythical treasure and a legendary pirate are understandable as a goal that can be achieved, but it just leaves an odd feeling. Like this Wunan guy had a literal mountain of gold, but his treasure isn't as consequential as Gold Roger's treasure, even though both have never been found. I suppose that just served to make Roger's haul more impressive in retrospect, unlike the villain of the movie, who is very unimpressive. Eldorado is a very fun name for a gold-obsessed dragon man, and his devil fruit power building on that with dragon shouts is fun. But his gold obsession is the only thing that comes out of his mouth and makes him very one note. The villains we've seen up to this point haven't exactly been super complex recurring masterminds, but they also have some modicum of intelligence. Eldorado and his whole crew are so stupid that it's frustrating. It makes for a few good jokes, but it completely fizzles out by the climax. Speaking of, Eldorado goes straight up Super Saiyan while fighting Luffy. Like, they do the same woobly energy bits and the same color palette, paired with the same sound effect. And to top it off, his beam attacks look like Kamehamehas. I like the big fight climax though. Zoro beating the Native American swordsman non-lethally and telling him to get stronger and find him is badass and a little funny for reasons yet to come. Luffy uses his powers to creatively combat Eldorado instead of just punching him a bunch, which I always love to see. And the reveal that the real treasure was the friends Wunan made before he even went along the way was touching. Overall, I really enjoyed the movie. The worst part about it is that it isn't even an hour long. Everything I disliked about it is just a bunch of minor nitpicks. One Piece the movie is an easy 8 out of 10, and I recommend watching it if you can find an easily accessible copy. Now back to your regularly scheduled episodes. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 19. I really like these flashback episodes that delve into characters' backstories, because it's always nice to see like what they were like when they were younger, how their personalities are the same but different. Plus Zoro with 8 swords. That's never not funny. I love how they build up Zoro and Kuina's rivalry, and how it's mostly Zoro, but Kuina is still, like, willing to train to beat him. But that just makes her death hit super hard, because they've effectively made it so that we're super attached to her, and then boom! Dead! God damn it, Oda! I really don't have much to say about this episode. It's just a pretty good episode that really effectively does characterization and makes us feel for the characters. But I will say, I also really love the music. I haven't had time to say that in any of these, but the music in One Piece is so good. Like, That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Oh, I guess I'm recording. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 20. This guy just starts describing all of the symptoms of scurvy, and how the hell, out of all of these seafaring adventurers and pirates and pirate hunters, does only Nami know what scurvy is? I like how overpowering of an aura the marine ship has, especially since it's definitely way better equipped than the Going Merry. Luffy, you don't need to take credit. This is actually the Marines' fault. They also introduced Cigarette Guy. His name is Sanji, and he likes wine and women. But he's the last of the main characters from the intro to be introduced. So Luffy agrees to work for this guy to pay off his debt, but like, Luffy, you're at best going to be washing dishes. You're not a trained chef. Maybe you'll be a waiter. How the hell are you going to pay off your debt in a week? That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 21. Say what you want about One Piece, but the character designs are certainly unique. I also love how they get around showing someone get shot by just turning the entire background red, then showing a guy with a gun. So Sanji's like a cool dude. He feeds the hungry, even though the hungry is a pirate that threatened to kill one of his co-workers. And you know the rules. If someone's a cool person, Luffy has to try to recruit them. This is just going to be pure guessing. I'm guessing that the head chef is his father, based purely on the fact that they're both blonde. Why does Studio Ghibli food look so good, though? They use this cooking montage a couple times in the episode, just not always interrupted with Luffy picking his nose, and that's a great way to save money on animation. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 22. I love how Sanji is just a little too respectful of women, if you catch my drift. Especially when one of those women is Nami, who's proven herself to be cold-hearted and calculating in how she gets free stuff. Honestly, I know it's supposed to be like in disrepair, but the tattered and broken look is such a killer aesthetic for a pirate ship. Kind of reminds me of Davy Jones from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies and the Flying Dutchman. And this, folks, is why you never trust a bad guy. Between this gun and Sanji, there's too many shrimps. Pack it up, boys. Shrimp gun couldn't get him. It's time to just pack it up. So, head chef guy is like a legendary pirate or something? I don't know. They said that he sailed with pirates or something, but then Don Krieg says his pirate name and is in shock. So, I guess he's like a big guy. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 23. Don Krieg says that the head chef guy is named Redfoot Zeph, and that he's apparently a legendary pirate. Love this little piece of animation. The selective use of color is great. How everything's all dark until he just starts murdering people with his feet and then bloodstained foot. Of course, Luffy being Luffy can't not Luffy his way into Luffying this guy. They're setting up something between those two and Nami. Nami's got like a wanted poster. I hope that doesn't come back to haunt this. Don Krieg's whole fleet was destroyed by one guy? Yeah, the power scaling in this show is going to get out of hand real quick. I get the guys with the forks and the knives, but what are you going to do with a spoon? That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 24. Nami took the ship and tricked the two pirate hunters by pretending to get topless, which, bad on you, both of you. But also, I've seen too much fan art of Nami on the internet to know that she's not going to be gone for long. Wow, Zoro's really going to try to go fight a guy that just split an entire ship in half. Not gonna lie, this moment is badass from that guy and kind of sad for Zoro. The callback to Zoro's first arrival, I'd say I hope we see more of her, but she's kind of dead, so that would be a bit difficult. On the bright side, Zoro's not dead, he's just really injured and probably needs to take a nap. This scene has big, for me, it was Tuesday energy. Anyways, I can't wait to see Luffy kick all these guys' asses at once. That's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 25. Don Krieg and his men are going to try to steal the floating restaurant. I love when action shows lean into goofy stuff like a detachable fish boat with guns. I vehemently hate this Pearl guy. His attitude, his powers, his design, they all just... I hate him. His stupid hat, his stupid little shield. Oh my god. I just hate him. The acrobats, the cats, now this guy. One Piece is just great at making character designs that I love and hate. So this moment is super cool. Redfoot Zeph proving that even without his red foot, he's still Redfoot Zeph. Boom. Now your little balls are useless. Sometimes I need to think about the words that I say before I say them. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 26. Zeph is being held at gunpoint, which means Sanji is distracted enough to that, and his head gets that, which means it's time for another flashback episode. I get why Sanji doesn't want to eat the food that people left as leftovers, but like, you're on a boat, man. Sooner or later, that's going to be your only option. They mentioned something called the All Blue, which is a place where fish from every sea can exist, but that like can't exist, right? I think they showed a map, either that or I looked it up online, and their world is literally split in half by a giant continent that a fish just couldn't cross. Me every time I come across a child while playing Sea of Thieves. This is literally the worst possible scenario to find yourself in, and I feel bad for the characters. Zeph's kindness giving Sanji all the food is why he has to repay him, or why he feels like he has to repay him. That's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 27. Gotta love it when an episode starts off with Luffy just demolishing the Baratier platform. Luffy's logic is technically sound in the most insane way possible, but like, come on, man. Thank you, Gin, for taking care of my least favorite character from this arc. Also, this whole time I thought Gin was just some random sailor who happened to be on Don Krieg's crew, but they're treating him like he's a big shot on the crew, and I just didn't see that coming. I might just be dumb. I thought this was going to end up being some in-between episode where they stall out the fight between Luffy and the big bad guy, but we do actually get some pretty okay action between Sanji and Gin. But from this point forward, it is pretty much just stalling out for the rest of the episode until, you know, we can get to the actual action next episode. But that's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 28. They make a really big deal out of the gas that Don Krieg shoots. Gin even saves Luffy with his gas mask, but like, that gas dispersed quick as heck. You could have held your breath for the duration of that. We finally get to the Luffy-Don Krieg fight, which is one-sided in a bit of the opposite direction than you'd expect. That is until Luffy uses the power of anime bullshit to determination his way through it. Zeph makes this big speech about how it's an honor just to see Luffy fight, but like, I don't know, this is just standard anime protagonist stuff. Oh, I'm too determined to give up. Oh, I'm gonna win because I have something you don't. The power of never giving up. But it's also really hard to get mad at One Piece for doing this because Again, One Piece is so old and so influential, it kind of helped establish these tropes. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 29. We're finally at the end of the Luffy and Don Krieg fight, but I'll be honest, of all the final boss fights so far, this has been my least favorite. It's mostly just been Luffy determinationing his way to victory, which, I don't know, I get it, it's kind of what anime is about, especially shonen anime, but it gets kind of boring because he's not even doing it in a creative way, he's just wailing on him. I say that, but this net scene is just the best. I love when they just absolutely delve into the super wacky parts of Luffy's abilities. Like, dude can stretch like a Looney Tunes, he should stretch like a Looney Tunes. And here we see the majestic sea Luffy return to its natural habitat. This whole time, all the chefs have been calling Luffy Chore Boy because they don't know his name, which has been funny, but it's exceptionally funny when Sanji's trying to get Luffy to not die, and he just keeps saying, Chore Boy, wake up! That's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 30. I love that when Luffy wakes up, the first thing he does is look for his hat. That's so adorable. Sanji clearly wanting to sail on the Grand Line, but wanting to make sure that Zeph is proud of him first. So all the chefs pretend that his cooking is awful at Zeph's orders. Zeph may not be his biological father, but he is for sure Sanji's dad. You can't just casually drop the fact that fishmen exist. There's a place called Fishman Island. Are fishmen mermaids? What the heck is a fishman? Of course, Luffy tries to exhaust them of their entire meat supply. Classic Luffy. Oh, this scene is so good. Oh, Sanji finally learning that Zeph is proud of him. Zeph being proud of Sanji. Oh, it's just, oh, I love it. Oh, hey, Nami finally changed shirts. Still not the one from the intro, though. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 31. Are Zoro's old pirate hunter pals just permanent parts of the crew? I didn't expect them to join, but like if they do, that's cool. Okay, so the show is finally getting around to actually explaining what makes the Grand Line so dangerous with like the 7 warlords, Arlong, and the third power, I think that's what they called them. But basically insanely strong people that make the Grand Line a living hell. Also, I guess this is what the heck a fishman is. But that still doesn't answer what the heck a fishman actually is. So they're just people that are also fish? Are they like a human offshoot? Or they're a different species than humans? They're not humans. They say that they're not humans. They say they're better than humans. But are they better than humans? Can humans match up to fishmen? Why is that guy an octopus? And why is this guy a cat? Poor Zoro getting tied up and then captured by the fishmen. Well, to be fair, he was tied up by his crewmates and then captured by the fishmen. Arlong is taking control of over 20 towns, but it looks like he's not taking control of them so much as he's literally turning them upside down. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 32. I just love this whole little sequence with all the hand gestures of Luffy just not understanding. Oh, it's so great. It's such good comedy without even saying a word. That poor giant cow, it just wants a snack. Sure, that snack might be Luffy, Sanji, and the third guy whose name I can't remember, but he just wants a snack. This is Nami's sister, and I didn't want to say anything about that because I thought it might be the case, but after Zeph not being Sanji's dad did the whole design similarities thing, I thought, okay, maybe it's just a coincidence. Nope, she's her sister, so I thought, oh, their designs are really similar, so that makes sense. No, they're not even biologically related. They just suffer from same face syndrome. Man, Arlong's nose is weird. Zoro calling Nami's bluff by almost killing himself? Jeez, man. That's hard. I'd question why this guy has a little propeller on his hat, but that's not even the weirdest design choice in the series so far. Zoro sitting on a throne of dead fishmen. Holy shit. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 33. Oh god, his finger whipping is transparent. I just absolutely love how Usopp is the smartest dumb guy on the crew. I also love Zoro just tricking the octopus guy by just letting octopus guy keep talking. It's also pretty cool how Arlong knows Zoro's name and knows that Zoro would be coming for him and actually looked kind of afraid. Poor Usopp does not deserve this treatment. I need to start recording my first watch-throughs of these because, oh my god, I audibly gasped when that happened. And this, folks, is why you never trust a giant sea cow to get you to your destination. I also like how Sanji's not even mad that his personal boat was destroyed. Look, you and I know Usopp's not really dead. He's in the intro, for goodness sake, but the character's thinking he's dead. That's got some good dramatic irony. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 34. I love how Luffy refuses to believe that Nami could be a bad person because he thinks that she's her friend. Like, obviously we know that Nami didn't actually kill Usopp, but like, Luffy doesn't know that yet. Sanji is a tier 3 Nami sub, confirmed. I also appreciate Nami trying to convince the rest of the crew that she's actually evil so they don't try to be her friend again. Really goes into some good character work. Forget the house flipping. This is how you establish Arlong is strong. What the heck? Fishmen are just busted. I was thinking that like Nami placed a fruit or something, not her hand. That's metal as hell. Poor Usopp. This is probably the worst possible way for your crew to find out you're still alive. I love this flashback sequence with the leak and then everyone panicking and then in comes Luffy inflating like a balloon. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 35. Luffy just walking by the fishmen unfazed is a great way to start the episode. Even though, you know, this isn't just a regular episode. It's a flashback episode. I love this introduction to Bellemere. But, like, what is that haircut? I also love that Bellemere is supportive of Nami's dream of becoming a navigator. That's so cute. Oh, Bellemere only eating tangerines so the girls can eat. Oh, this moment is absolutely heart-wrenching, and I've only known this character for like 10 minutes at this point. How, even with Sanji's backstory, does Nami somehow have the saddest backstory of all the Straw Hat Pirates so far? Arlong and the Fishmen ruining everything. They were gonna be happy. Bellemere's even making her tangerine sauce. I don't know what that is, but it sounds good. And then the fishmen have to ruin everything. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 36. Never forgive the fishmen for what they're about to do to Bellemere. Now this is how you show that a character is a badass. And then this is how you show that they're still inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. I just feel so bad for little Nami and her sister. Oh, Bellemere. The scene where Bellemere is forced to pretend. Oh, it hurts my heart. Especially when you get the children's reaction to it. And then their reaction to Bellemere saying that they exist. Oh, why couldn't Arlong just let them be a happy family? Why did he have to be so cruel? This is the first time in the show someone's got shot and, like, blood trails. Normally it just flashes the screen red. No, it doesn't show the whole blood trail thing. That's actually pretty gruesome. Look at the face that young Nami is making. There's no way that any of the villagers would actually believe that she was just doing it for the money. That face says everything. I'm absolutely loving this arc so far. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 37. These no-good, corrupt Marines with that stupid boss with a rat. I think he's supposed to be a rat. I don't know. I keep wanting to call him a cat because he's got the whiskers, but the ears are more indicative of a rat. I absolutely hate this guy. 10 out of 10 character. How long does it take to get to Arlong Park? Because, like, they kind of act like it takes a while, but also at the same time, Nami can just run over here. Everyone in town deciding they're gonna fight for their village because even though Nami tried her best, the system was corrupt to begin with. Oh, this is so sweet. This is kind of gruesome. Nami just stabbing herself in the shoulder until Luffy stops her. Like, that's one way to get rid of a tattoo, I guess. I genuinely thought we had seen the last of these guys. Don't worry, everyone. The day will be saved as soon as these 4 men leisurely walk over here. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 38. Well, that's one way to knock. The henchman fishmen, obviously no match for Luffy and his crew, which is why they call in the big cow sea monster, which, as we've already seen, is no match for Luffy and his crew, and it remembers. So just to take out 2 birds with 1 stone, Luffy, well, remember the pinwheel? Luffy is pretty creative when it comes to his fight scenes. It's just, I wish there was more like this and less just him barrage punching, you know? But we've got our main pairings for the actual fights that are going to go on, the mini-boss fights. We've got Sanji and Karate Man, Zoro versus Octopus Guy, and Usopp running the hell away from the other guy. And of course the title card is going to be Arlong versus Luffy. I like it, a lot of potential for some pretty creative fights, and Luffy's dead. I'm really looking forward to see how all of the fights pan out. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 39. I like how this episode acknowledges that this arc is taking place like maybe a day or 2 at most after Zoro got injured by Hawkeye. But the beginning of this episode is what I like to call the Empire Strikes Back moment. It's when the characters are at their lowest point. Like in the Empire Strikes Back, right before Return of the Jedi, where the rebels triumphantly win. It's the point where everything just has gone incredibly wrong. This episode has a lot of moments of continuity, which is really cool, but it makes sense because it's not an episodic show. It's just that Western animation has primed me to think that when a cartoon, shows clips from previous episodes or acknowledges things that previously happened in the story, it's like some big groundbreaking thing. I also like the sheer display of Zoro's determination being the winning factor here, which I know I criticized Luffy's win against Don Krieg as being exactly that, but at least with Zoro they show him struggling a little more. I can't wait to see how everyone almost dies next episode. That's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 40. So the majority of this episode is Sanji versus Fishman Karate, and Sanji, you're underwater, what did you expect? I do like how they get pretty creative with how they kick Sanji's ass. Especially with the whole underwater pressure and the human body needing to adjust and not being able to rapidly change things. That's actually real-world science that they're applying to this anime logic. Sanji also applying sort of real-world logic. If he's breathing with the gills underwater, then that means he has to use a different set of lungs, and it's not just the same organs being used in multiple situations. That's pretty intelligent. Speaking of brains, everyone's good old favorite coward, Usopp, is also probably the smartest person on the crew, because Usopp is willing to fight dirty. Usopp just kept throwing stuff at this guy until he died. I've said it before, but this arc has been really fun so far. I am really looking forward to more episodes. I just straight up can't stop watching them. I've recorded 5 of these so far, and I'm gonna go record 3 more. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 41. Arlong is kind of just a jerk, giving Nami a deal that he knows she can't say no to. That's just mean, Arlong. That's mean. I love the corresponding imagery of the butterfly caught in the spider's web. It is so good at conveying what the situation is like. I love when shows do stuff like that. And then showing Nami with the straw hat, showing the influence of Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates, and then showing the butterfly break free. That's just great. Oh, I love it. The showcase of the bond between the crew with Zoro and Sanji willing to die just to save Luffy's life. We know they're not going to die. This is an anime, but Zoro's literally willing to do this to save Luffy. Even Usopp is pitching in, which only makes this moment with the wounds will open back up when you think Zoro's about to die, but nope, it's actually Octopus Guy whose wounds open back up, and Sanji gets to save the day. And Luffy slingshot so much better. That's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 42. Arlong's got that long saw-like nose, and with teeth like that, he's definitely based on a shark. So I looked up what kind of shark he's based on, and believe it or not, it's the long saw-nose shark. This thing with the teeth regenerating, I hate it and I love it at the same time. That is, Only someone as dumb as Luffy could think that sticking someone else's teeth in your mouth means you have an advantage. I also like how they point out, yeah, the teeth are sharp, but Arlong's jaw is what really makes him strong. Luffy is straight up losing at the beginning of this fight, which I think is great, because he's just trying to replicate what Arlong is doing against him, and it's not working out because he's not fighting to his own strengths. Which is what makes this moment so good, when he starts playing into his own strengths and gets creative with his rubber skills, making a net to catch Arlong instead of playing at Arlong's game. Comparing Arlong when he starts losing to the imagery of a rampaging sea monster is so great. That's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 43. I like this display of Luffy's determination and his bond with his friends, shattering Arlong's sword just because he would be mean to Nami and hold her hostage. I say that as if it's a small thing. But the best thing is Luffy playing it smart and not just attacking Arlong, but throwing out all of Nami's charts and stuff that she made, so Arlong has no advantage. Then when this moment hits, oh my god, Arlong's been boasting about his unbreakable nose, and then Luffy just straight up bends it, and then tears down the entirety of Arlong apart, with Arlong still inside of it. Now this is how you end a fight. What the hell is this? Is that a snail phone? Snails are phones? So snails are just telecommunication devices. They're also fax machines, not just phones. I love that the only picture they could get of Luffy is just him smiling. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 44. I like this little downtime episode. Now that all the fighting is done, everyone can just kind of relax and celebrate for a bit. We've gotten one after every arc so far, but usually it's just kind of small. But since this is their biggest victory, it makes sense that this would be the biggest celebration. It's also kind of funny how it takes Zoro literally getting sewn back together for Luffy to realize, hey, maybe getting a doctor wouldn't be that bad of an idea. And even then, he still prioritizes getting a musician. But I think what really makes me like this episode so much is it has a lot of emotional moments, like the pinwheel guy and Luffy accidentally talking to each other, or this scene with Nami and Bellemir's ghost. Are ghosts real in One Piece? I'm just going to assume they're real. The wackier stuff has happened. But the ending moment where they say that Nami's tattoo is a pinwheel and a tangerine, and then they pan out to Bellemir's grave and show a pinwheel and a tangerine, that just hits so hard. I really hope at some point we come back to see these characters again. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 45. I like the detail that only Buggy, Krieg, and Arlong have wanted posters on this board because the other two people Luffy beat were a Marine and someone that the Marines didn't know was still alive. I'm also interested to know more about this bounty system. Are these the guys that place the bounties on everyone or just the East Blue? Or I also love being able to go and revisit some of these characters and see their reactions to the wanted poster. Even if it does kind of have a clip show feel to it. Like some of these characters, like I thought this guy was dead. It's also great to see Luffy's reaction to his own mugshot. And the fact that he has a 30 million berry bounty, that's not a cause for concern for him, that's a cause for celebration, and I love it. This bit with Shanks and Hawkeye, oh my gosh, it's so good with the dramatic lighting. You can feel the tension like these two titans have fought before, which makes it all the better when Shanks just invites him to have a drink. It's great how Shanks' entire crew is just proud of Luffy, and Luffy's hometown too. But that's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 46. This has some real sitcom energy of, you guys remember Buggy the Clown? I wonder what he's doing. Which of course leads into, this is a Buggy the Clown episode. I mean, I'm not going to complain. Buggy's great, at least in this episode. I love his Looney Tunes shenanigans to try to get a bird, and how it immediately backfires on him in an equally Looney Tunes way. It's also great how we get to see an unexpected Gaimon again. All I'm saying, give Gaimon devil fruit powers, he solos all of One Piece. He can take on a devil fruit user while he's stuck in a box. Imagine if he was unchained. But the two of them becoming friends is also great. I like it. Especially when they're both unknowingly talking about Luffy and saying very opposite things about him. At this moment, I probably should have told him about the sea monster. It's just, I have no clue who this woman is, but she's also looking for Luffy, so that means she's either in love with him or his mother. Knowing my track record with theories, that answer is probably going to be either neither or both, but that's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 47. I didn't expect 2 Buggy episodes in a row, but it's nice to see Buggy's crew again, except for that guy. I still hate his design. It's funny to see these two duke it out for who gets to be captain, as though either of them are anywhere near good enough to be captain. It's also hilarious how it goes on for literal hours, only to be interrupted by the lion of all things taking both of them down and claiming the captain spot. What do you know, a lion being able to swoop in and beat a few people up does not mean he's going to be a great captain. I was wondering what happened to the rest of Buggy's parts since he's just a head and a couple limbs right now, but seeing that they've been buried and are soon to be unburied, I guess I don't need to wonder anymore. Well, Captain Richie, it was great while it lasted, but the feared clown pirate, Captain Buggy, is back in town. I would be being dishonest if I said I didn't miss our main cast the entire time we were focusing on Buggy. Can't wait to see how next episode pans out. Maybe they'll finally find a doctor. Stay tuned for watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 48. The pirates land where Gold Roger was executed, so what does Luffy do? Immediately try to find the exact spot. That is so Luffy, and I love it. It's adorable. This episode is the start of a new intro, and honestly, I like the old one better. Despite Usopp being such a frequent liar, he sure does fall for lies a lot. So we're introduced to Smoker, who I'm guessing is going to be the main antagonist of this little arc. He has devil fruit powers, but I can't tell quite what they are at this point. Like, is his devil fruit power that he can control cigarette smoke? It certainly seems that way, especially when he obliviously points Luffy exactly where he needs to go. So you mean to tell me, this person just happens to look exactly like Zoro's dead childhood rival? They also reveal that the One Piece isn't just the name of Gold Roger's treasure, it's an already existing treasure that he just happened to find. So what is the One Piece? Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 49. It's fun to see Luffy attempt to scale Gold Roger's execution platform, especially when he gets tangled up trying to fight Smoker. Then during the fight proceeds to get tangled up again. Come on Luffy, you should have better control of your powers. You took out Arlong. But Luffy flying through the air is a good way to give us just glimpses as to what the other characters are doing. Sanji, Usopp, Buggy. But the majority of this episode is dedicated to showing Zoro and not Kuina. You can't tell me that she's not his childhood friend just brought back to life somehow. In fact, maybe she was never even dead. It's fun to see Zoro actually doing the chores he was told to do to help pay off the glasses. And not only that, but doing them with such diligence. The decent part of this episode is, of course, though, this bit in the shop where Zoro's trying to buy a new sword. I'm not gonna lie, this sequence where he tests his luck with the cursed sword is probably the coolest moment in the entire show so far. So that's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 50. So we're introduced to this new badass character named Daddy the Father, and I found out immediately after watching this episode when I googled his name to see if it was really Daddy the Father that he's anime only and this is all filler. But I don't really care if it's filler because these interactions between Usopp and Daddy the Father's daughter are actually really funny, and I really enjoyed this episode. You can't tell me that a man pulling out 12 dozen guns isn't hilarious. Plus, all the characters are still feeling like themselves. It doesn't feel like filler, and that's what I think makes it good. Sure, we'll never see this guy again, but it's still nice to give Usopp that kind of connection with his father, even if it's never going to come into play. I know now that none of this is canon, but when I didn't think it was filler, I thought that it was a very good expansion on Usopp's character, and that it really cemented his place in the crew. The episode being filler doesn't make it bad. I know that there is going to be some pretty bad filler eventually, but, you know, that's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 51. This episode is following Sanji as he goes against a new rival. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but One Piece is great at creating character designs that I vehemently hate while loving at the same time. Look at this. You do also get this pretty funny interaction between Zoro, Luffy, Buggy, and Buggy's first mate, which I think is hilarious because Buggy accidentally pays for the food of the people that he's literally hunting. I love that fish from different seas are ending up at Logtown of all places, which means that the All Blue probably does exist somehow. I still don't know how it could, but they give a detailed explanation of why the All Blue shouldn't be possible, but it's also One Piece, you know it's gonna be out there somewhere. But of course, to get the cool fish, Sanji has to enter a cooking competition, because why not? Sanji, of course, wins the competition because he's the best chef in the entire East Blue. I like having these little downtime bits between the big events because, you know, it just helps flesh out the characters a little more. That's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 52. Luffy's finally back to the exact spot that Gold Roger was executed, which of course means everything needs to start going wrong. You mean to tell me that the lady going after Luffy is the one from the first episode that Luffy saved Kobe from? Also, I was right, she is in love with him. But she's not his mom. I'm also coming from the One Punch Man fandom, so the fact that Luffy actually remembers his villains is kind of something that threw me off for a bit. The only thing that saves Luffy being a literal act of divine intervention is just perfect. Perfectly sums up what kind of luck this character has to get to maintain his advantage. I guess it makes sense that Luffy would be immune to lightning. He is made of rubber after all. I'm hoping the villains continue to be like Smoker and this new version of Buggy that are actual genuine threats to the main cast instead of just fodder for them to beat their way through. After all, that's the reason that Arlong was so much memorable than Axe Hand Johnson, whatever his name was. But that's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece. Episode 53. Here I am last episode talking about Buggy being a big threat, and what does he do this episode? He turns himself into a car. We also get a display of Smoker's power when he stops Buggy and Alvida. I'm assuming his power is kind of like Luffy's, except instead of rubber, it's smoke. I mean, makes sense. He is Smoker after all. Who would have guessed? It's near impossible to start a fire in the rain at sea. Oof. It's finally time for Luffy versus Smoker, and for Luffy to get his ass handed to him on a silver platter. Only for this mysterious cloaked figure, who I'm assuming is also the one responsible for the lightning strike that saved Luffy. That means he's either his father or in love with him. I absolutely love this scene, with all the characters talking about their hopes and dreams, what they want to accomplish on the Grand Line. It is an amazing way to just sum up the entire East Blue saga while giving us an amazing look at these characters, their dynamic. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more when next time we cover the Warship Island arc. Strap in for a bit, because we're going to be in the 16:9 aspect ratio for a while. Starting this chain off is the first special of the series. Technically, this special aired after episode 52, but I'm putting it after episode 53 in this video because I don't want an awkward gap in Logtown and a single episode jammed between this and Jango's Dance Carnival. Luffy Falls, Adventure in the Uncharted Ocean's Navel, is right in the sweet spot of not being long enough to be a movie and being too long to be a standard episode at 45 minutes, which would fill an hour of broadcast, making it a double-length episode. Adventure in the Ocean's Navel is actually structured a lot like One Piece the movie, which makes a lot of sense considering they're really only 10 minutes apart in runtime. It starts off not with the Straw Hat crew, but instead it starts with this menacingly shaded pirate whose name we'll come to learn is Captain Joke as he makes his way to the greatest treasure of the sea, only for his crew to seemingly become possessed and kill him. It's actually a fairly strong opening for the movie-like narrative and is done decently well. The Straw Hats only come into play, like they always do, through sheer coincidence and good timing. Sanji is present on the ship, which means the Ocean's Navel takes place anytime after Arlong Park, but before they get to the Grand Line. And for reasons I'll get to later, I like to believe it comes after Logtown. The Ocean's Navel is a large patch of island below sea level. It's unclear to me whether it was like a big pit or a big bubble under the sea, but I'm also stupid, so take that with a grain of salt. In classic One Piece fashion, the crew gets split up, with Nami, Sanji, and Usopp going down in the submersible, and Luffy and Zoro getting dragged to the navel after the first group encounters a giant monster that brings the whole ship with it. The giant monsters are the brunt of the threat and action in the special, each of them having a seal on them and glowing red eyes that, upon defeat, fade to black and bring a piece of a mysterious skeleton that obviously belongs to the ugly-ass bat that harasses the Straw Hats. Said bat is also very obviously Captain Joke, who we learn more about thanks to the remaining population of the Ocean's Navel. And by remaining population of the Ocean's Navel, I mean these two. I actually really like their designs. They have a nice motif going on, and the lady actually has a face built out of shapes other than the same cookie cutter ones that pretty much every female character so far has had. She's still got a twig body with balloons for a chest, but I'll take whatever variety I can get. Climax of the special is also pretty good, with the treasure Captain Joke was searching for being the power to make dreams come true. Instead of Joke reaching it, the young boy reaches it and uses the power to retrieve his dream of avenging his home and finding a strong friend. I watched a fan-led translation, so the subtitles use Nakama instead of ally or friend, because early internet weebs do as early internet weebs do, but this is also the only way to ever be able to watch it, and it just shows that they have a lot of passion and respect for the source material, so it's got my full endorsement. This special is probably the first bit of One Piece media I'd recommend skipping if you're an English-only audience member. It's hard enough to track down that the middling quality doesn't justify the expenses needed to watch it legally, nor the effort to seek it out via illegal methods. That said, if you can find a release cheaply or as part of a package with other One Piece media, you should watch it. Jango's Dance Carnival, on the other hand, I fully recommend. Jango's Dance Carnival is a 5-minute long short attached to the second One Piece movie, and it's basically just a 5-minute excuse to watch One Piece characters dance and listen to the song Ready by Folder 5. Folder 5 also did the second opening of the anime. The story of the short is as follows. Jango from Syrup Village washes ashore on Mirrorball Island, where he's caught by the Marines and runs away before hypnotizing the entire island to dance. Coincidentally, the Straw Hats are also visiting Mirrorball and get caught in the commotion. This is actually based on a series of covers telling the canon story of what happened to Jango after he got war crimed by those children. The actual dance animation is spectacularly fluid, and it's kind of funny to see everyone be consciously aware of the fact they're being forced to dance. Most of the island population was already dancing, so they're into it, but the Marine captain and 3 of the 5 Straw Hats are not having fun. Luffy is super into it though, continuing his dance even after the island falls apart. The short also blends 2D animation with 3D environments, giving it that extra special touch of early 2000s that lets it feel timelessly dated. It's a really enjoyable short, and I have no idea if it's available officially anywhere in English, but there are numerous re-uploads on YouTube, so if you've got a spare 5 minutes, I'd recommend checking it out. One Piece Clockwork Island Adventure. I'm gonna be honest, the audio for this segment corrupted, I had to re-record it. Everything else was already recorded before this. I just realized that my camera was on the wrong setting for everything else in this video, so this is gonna look a little different. Much like One Piece the movie, One Piece Clockwork Island Adventure has only ever had one official English release. The same release, actually. The first 3 movies were all released in subtitled format at the same time, and only in England, which is why there's probably more than a few longtime fans here in America that have never seen them. Unlike One Piece the movie, Clockwork Island Adventure is one for the pervs among the crowd. The pervy elements start off light, just with Nami and swimwear, but things escalate until both the movie and you reach climax. And let me tell you, the more that what you're into is considered taboo, the better time you're gonna have here. To list it in no particular order, we have women stripping naked and turning into goo, Sanji's bare-ass feet, the aforementioned Nami bikini scene with Sanji rubbing suntan lotion on her, and worst of all, in my opinion, Usopp fart inhalation inflation. I had to see it, so you have to see it too. Other than being a fetishist paradise, the actual movie isn't that bad. The general gist of the plot is that another pirate group named either the Trump siblings or the Card Brothers, depending on what version you watch, steal the Going Merry and everything on board. This leaves the Straw Hats without their ship, equipment, or even their clothes. While searching the sea in a swan boat and wedding clothes that they stole from a wedding shop, they get scooped up by a duo known by the Thief Brothers. The Thief Brothers' boat ends up getting destroyed by the Trump siblings, and Nami gets kidnapped because a naked lady thinks she looks smokin' in a wedding dress. Not that I disagree. The Straw Hats and Thief Brothers team up and go to the Trump siblings' base of operations on Clockwork Island, and one by one, they get their shit kicked in until Luffy gets his shit together. Although the day is saved, Clockwork Island ends up collapsing because it was being held in the sky by a winding mechanism, and everyone goes on their merry way, happy as can be, with their homes destroyed. I'm intentionally skipping over a lot of shit, watch the movie if you want details. The animation is top notch, and once again has a noticeably more expensive quality to it, albeit this time it's done digitally rather than on cells like One Piece the movie was. Speaking of, there's actually quite a few bits of unexpected continuity between the two movies. You see these three henchmen? They were originally henchmen of Eldorado before joining up with the Trump siblings, and Eldorado himself actually appears in the end credits. The end credit song is the same as the second opening, and likewise starts with a montage of important characters, with Eldorado just kind of slapped in at the end. Honestly, I'm all for it. Every time I watch one of these movies, I want to see a hidden Eldorado Easter egg, just because. Oh, and the credits are also filled with what I can only assume is a massive amount of contextless spoilers for what's about to come. At least the first movie had the decency to make the credit scenes fake adventures. There's also just not much else to say about Clockwork Island Adventure. The characters are all well written, the newly introduced characters are fun except for the fart guy, the character designs are solid except for the fart guy, and we even get to see two whole women with unique faces. It also uses its runtime fairly well, being about the same length as One Piece the movie. And if anything, despite not being feature length, it's paced a little too slow, right up until the climax speeds through everything else. I guess I should probably also mention that Clockwork Island Adventure came out between episodes 60 and 61. That's also probably about when you should insert it into your watch order if you do plan on watching the series from the start. It actually fits pretty neatly between the end of Warship Island and the Straw Hats entry into the Grand Line. I only decided to include it in this video ahead of the next batch of episodes before I watched it, and by the time I did, I had already written a decent chunk of the ending, and I'm too lazy to change it. Good news though, this is the last batch of episodes before the video is over. Bad news though, this is the worst batch of episodes in the entire saga. Not in terms of my reviews, of course, just in terms about how I feel about them and how they nearly made me reevaluate the series as a whole. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 54. We're introduced to this little girl who's being held prisoner by the Marines but makes a daring escape, only to be fished up by Luffy when she gets mistaken for a fish. I really like this little gag where she's going for food late at night and sets off a tripwire only for it to be revealed that it wasn't her that got snatched, it was Luffy in a late night snack run. Also this guy, another one of those designs that I absolutely hate. I don't know quite how to pinpoint it, but all the characters feel ever so slightly off. Not enough to make it like horrible or anything, but just enough to where it's noticeable. Like, obviously they're not going to be jerks to a kid or anything, but there's just something I can't quite pin down why it just doesn't feel quite the same. Putting this episode directly after the last one, with the storm clearing up and everything, it just kind of feels so out of place, you know? It just makes this whole little arc feel so shoehorned in. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 55. So they've wound up in an area called the Calm Belt, which serves as an explanation as to why people can't just enter the Grand Line willy-nilly. But in this episode it also serves as a threat to the Straw Hat Pirates' lives as they get surrounded by giant sea monsters. Doesn't this moment kind of break the rules of Luffy's powers? Like, I thought they were momentum-based, not just that he could stretch like Reed Richards. Like, I know in the rest of this shot it is momentum-based, but like in that initial reaching down, he just kind of stretched out. Otherwise, I do like their solution for the mega monster to just pluck a nose hair and force to sneeze. But that is kind of mean, you know? Have you ever plucked a nose hair? That hurts. Okay, so dragons are real, and it turns out Little Oppies here has about the lamest devil fruit power, the ability to talk to animals, which, you know, if it was just that would be pretty cool. But it also removes her ability to swim and has pretty much no defensive or offensive capabilities. It just seems like one of the lamest superpowers in One Piece. But that's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 56. You can probably tell from the past few of these that I'm not the biggest fan of Warship Island. It just, I don't know, it feels so lame compared to what we've gotten before. Like, the writing is just ever so slightly worse. The animation is fine, I guess. The characters, the new characters they introduce, I should specify, just don't feel as up to par as the other characters that have been introduced in recent episodes. But this does rank among the top 10 Usopp faces in the series. I guess this bit where they roll the cart downhill is pretty neat, but like overall, it just feels like this whole arc so far has been half-baked. Straight up, it doesn't matter how threatening you try to make this guy, I will never take someone with that goofy-ass haircut seriously. I really hope that this arc picks up in quality, because as of right now, it is definitely my least favorite. That's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 57. Oh god, the snail phones are back. So the whole reason that this guy and the Marines are pursuing Appice is because that dragon, apparently his blood can make people immortal, but they keep calling it Dragonite, and I can't help but think, oh hey, Pokemon! And also they have to find this senile dragon's home on Lost Island. If you want to find Lost Island so bad, just go to Hawaii. That's where they filmed Lost. I do appreciate that this arc is trying to shake up the formula of go to island, do some stuff, leave, by having it be go to island, do some stuff, go to other island, do some stuff, leave. But it comes off less as a formula shake-up in the idea of doing something new, and more of a formula shake-up in the idea that whoever wrote it wasn't familiar with the formula and why people like it. So far, Warship Island is the community season 4 of the East Blue. That's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 58. So you mean to tell me that the dragon's nest they were looking for was on Warship Island the whole time? And this entire excursion to this secondary island that isn't Lost Island has been a waste of time and not even a fun one. I started off watching this arc with mild indifference, you know, thinking, okay, so it's a filler arc. It's probably not going to be too bad because it's the very first one. But the more I think about it to make these little reviews, the more I realize I just hate it. The villains aren't interesting, the character designs for this arc are just weird and not in a good way. It introduces concepts that don't mesh with the wider universe already established, and this whole episode has just been a filler arc for the filler arc. Can you tell that I'm really not a big fan of Warship Island? But that's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 59. The contents of this episode completely vacated themselves from my head the second I finished it, so bear with me on this. This whole chain strategy is pretty ingenious in order to stop a ship, but it seems like kind of a pain in the butt to set up. I get it's for a supposed elixir of immortality with the dragon's blood and all that, but like at what point is it not worth it anymore? Like, come on, this whole thing exists just for you to get clowned on, essentially. A significant amount of these men are going to drown thanks to you, Luffy, you cold-hearted psychopath. This dragon could die right now, and I would cheer. The villains could win, and I would just be glad that this arc was over. That's all for this time, stay tuned for more. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 60. Look, I honestly just don't care about Luffy trying to save the Boomer Dragon, or the Marines trying to capture it, or even the dozens of other Millennial Dragons. Warship Island has completely failed to make me care about any of it. If I wasn't already committed to watching this whole show, I would have just dropped off right here. Or skipped it. Oh, it turns out Lost Island was directly next to Warship Island, but the reason it's called Lost Island is because it sinks. Ooh, oh, so cool. Not worth 4 episodes. You know what? I do at least like that there's a happy ending for Appice, getting her dragon reborn as a baby, elder millennial dragon. Still not a good enough ending to save this arc, though. That's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. It's gonna get better, I promise. Watching and reviewing all of One Piece, episode 61. I am so happy I will never have to see Appice again after this. I also find it hilarious that there's the exact moment you could stitch this bit after the Warship Island arc onto the ending of Logtown, because the storm is back. This explanation for how Reverse Mountain and the Grand Line work actually do answer a lot of my questions, and I'm very thankful for it. I can also rest thankful in the knowledge that Nami just straight up kills this guy. He can't swim, he's a devil fruit user, he's dead forever. Goodbye. This also marks the official end of the East Blue Saga. They're on the Grand Line now. This is the end of the East Blue. And it's been one heck of a journey so far. I can't wait for the next 1,000 episodes. And neither can Gary. Well, that's all for this time. Stay tuned for more. Warship Island. What a way to end the saga. let's pretend for a moment that Warship Island doesn't exist so I can go back to enjoying life. The East Blue Saga is without a doubt a great way to begin the 1,000+ episode journey that we still have ahead of us. There are low points like Don Krieg, but it's overall a very solid introduction to the main cast, their hopes, their dreams, their abilities, and the kind of world that One Piece is. It answers enough questions to keep me satisfied, but keeps enough open to make me want to keep going. Everything behaves exactly the way it should, from the smallest joke to the heaviest emotional moment. I may be 25 years too late, but I can completely understand how One Piece was able to capture the heart of an audience that spans an entire globe. Now let's stop ignoring Warship Island for a little bit. In fact, let's do a little fun experiment. The Everything is Canon timeline. The timeline starts simple with the first few arcs where Luffy recruits Zoro and Nami, happening as they do in the show. Then there's a quick 1 or 2 day detour to defeat Gonzak. Again, nothing eventful until Syrup Island is finished when One Piece the movie happens. From here, the show plays out exactly as it does right up until the end of Logtown. The Straw Hats have their big emotional moment where they share their hopes and dreams on the way to the Grand Line, and then that segments immediately into Warship Island. Then after Warship Island, we go on an uninterrupted string of Adventure in the Ocean's Navel, Jango's Dance Carnival, and Clockwork Island Adventure. When you lay out how long it takes between what's supposed to be the penultimate culmination of the entire East Blue Saga, before Reverse Mountain and the actual entry to the Grand Line, it becomes comical. Of course, if you only watch the show, then it doesn't come off weird at all other than Warship Island, because the supplementary material really isn't supposed to be in there, so it just isn't, unless you seek it out. I really don't want to end on negativity, so I'm going to share a list of my favorites. Favorite character? Usopp. He started off annoying, but he really grew on me, especially as he continued to be present. Favorite arc? Arlong Park. This is the first time we get to see the whole crew interact, and it's done excellently. Not to mention, Arlong is probably the best villain in the series so far. Favorite scene? Hands down, this belongs to Zoro testing his luck against the cursed sword. S-tier scene and an incredible moment. Favorite ability? The list of memorable abilities so far is limited, so I've got to give it to Luffy. Rubber powers just seem so much more useful in the sea than Chop Chop powers or perfectly smooth skin. Favorite weird concept that just kind of works? Snail phones. I don't get it, it just fits with the world well somehow. Snails as phones makes absolutely zero sense in a way that makes complete sense, you know? Unfortunately, this is where I have to leave you. If you want more One Piece reviews, I have more than a few more shorts out that you can work through at your own pace, and I also plan on uploading them as close to daily as possible. Also, I probably should have said this earlier, but you should watch the actual show if you're watching these reviews. I leave out so much and just kind of assume that you know things because the target audience for this is people who've already seen everything. If you're watching this with fresh eyes, just go watch the actual show, and then come back and watch this again. But that's all for this time. Stay tuned for more when I do this same thing in a few months for all of Alabasta.